way better role. Way better. Like, love it. I'm like,
Ready?
okay.
This is Haley.
And this is Bailey. You're listening to Unleashed. Haley, we are finally back on the same time zone, and it's so exciting after I was gone for 5 months in Florida.
Literally, it's hilarious whenever we would text 11:11, it would be like 8:11 my time, and I'm like, it's not 11:11. But it would be for you because you'd be in a different time zone. But I remember when the first time we texted 11:11 and we were in the same time zone, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get emotional. We're in the same time zone. So silly.
I know, it's been so long. Just a reminder, we have a podcast that comes out every other Monday and a live following that on Wednesdays on our unleash.club Instagram account, Hey Bailey Drew, and all of the Travelier.
All right, Bailey, I told you I wanted to do something fun and you didn't get to know. So I hope you're stressing right now.
So stressed.
We're going to take a quiz. At least you are. I've already taken it. But I haven't asked you any of these questions. So you get to answer them live. And it's about, are you an introvert, extrovert, or ambivert? And we're going to figure out what you are by answering. I think there's like a few questions. I don't know how many. So all the questions are agree, disagree.
Okay.
Answers. Okay. At a house party, you can be found telling a story to a group of people you just met. Agree or disagree?
Disagree. I don't know, these are hard. I'm so bad at quizzes.
Question 2.
Quizzes scare me.
That's the first question. All right, question 2. Hopefully this doesn't challenge too hard. When you order takeout, you don't mind picking up the phone and calling the restaurant.
No, I have Evan do it usually. Disagree. I mean, I'll do it, but if someone's there, it's like, okay, you can do it. What do you mean? Thanks.
I mean, we can always fluff up these and be like, well, yeah, no, just yes or no. All right, when someone
Haley's like, just say agree or disagree.
Bailey, stop complicating the quiz. Son of a nutcracker. Okay. When someone cancels plans, you feel relieved.
Agree.
You're feeling very comfortable being alone.
Yeah, I feel comfortable being alone. Agree. This is hard. I'm not good at test taking. I panic.
You're usually excited about the idea of a group project.
Disagree? I don't know. That's a hard one. There's too many variables in this. I'm really annoying Haley right now.
You're not annoying me at all. I think it's hilarious. This is literally the mind of you. Jeez Louise, I thought this would be an easy quiz for you.
No quizzes are easy quizzes for me.
You're usually excited about the idea of a group project.
Agree.
All right. Would you agree or disagree that most of your friends are extroverts?
Disagree.
The idea of a first date makes your skin crawl. Agree or disagree?
Agree. First dates are not fun usually.
The awkward little small talk dance. Yeah. I would love to live in the countryside with nothing but fields surrounding me. Agree or disagree?
Agree. It's a newer thing now.
I like being the center of attention. Agree or disagree?
Disagree.
You have a hard time staying still or quiet for a long period of time.
Agree.
You're great at making eye contact.
Agree.
All right. You are an introvert. Though you probably have ambivert tendencies at heart, you're an introvert. Socializing is great, but only when it's limited and you're surrounded by people you know and trust.
That sounds like me, I feel like. I was really debating before we did this podcast if I was an introvert or an extrovert or an ambivert. So that was good to do because I feel like I wasn't really sure looking at all the different qualities of each one.
That's why I wanted to do it with you. I think it's really interesting because when I took the quiz, I got ambivert.
Interesting.
Ambivert. It sounds weird. Ambivert. So for you listeners, if you're not familiar with what an ambivert is the common or middle ground it's a combination of introvert and extrovert. So that means they don't necessarily have introvert tendencies or extrovert, they just have a combination of both, and that's what an ambivert is. I would say though, if I had to pick if I was an extrovert or introvert, I would definitely say I'm an introvert.
I actually have a question for you. Were there any questions that I answered agree that you remembered you answered like opposite? I'd be curious, like what makes you an ambivert versus me an introvert?
I don't think it was any like opposites that I can remember. The one I just remember significantly standing out, like I remember being like, "Oh, that is Bailey to a T," was the eye contact. I remember very specifically when we met in Hawaii and we were at Starbucks sitting outside on that patio. Bryce and I, when we were walking away, were like, she is so good at eye contact. It wasn't like you were creepy staring into my soul. Like it wasn't anything like that. But it was just like you're really like you were very confident, held yourself, very well, and it was easy to talk to you and there wasn't any weirdness.
I feel like it's so interesting because everyone is so different when you first meet somebody, and I also think it depends on who you're with. I actually remember going recently, I don't know, I went out to coffee with somebody and I remember really thinking like, "Oh, I need to work on my eye contact right now." I don't know what made me think that, but it wasn't like it came easily. I don't know. It's like usually I don't really think much of it, but I either felt like they weren't making eye contact or I don't know, it's like it felt like I was like my eyes were
Interesting.
kind of wandering. I don't know if like, there's a lot going on or not, but that's interesting to know that you thought that when we first met. Because when we were doing this quiz, I was like, do I make good eye contact? Like I asked you because I feel like it's something I have focused on in the past, but I don't know if I do
It's something
it
you're
when
aware
I'm
of.
not, yeah, like I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, it's funny because like the new season of Love Is Blind, there's a guy on there and he makes really intense eye contact, and the girl even calls him out on it. Was like, "Do you ever blink?" Like he's like, I just make eye contact." He's very like he really does like look into your soul. He's genuine and he's great, but it's just like she pointed that out and made her uncomfortable. So I think sometimes eye contact can make people uncomfortable, and I think that's when you kind of I don't know. That whole show in itself is a different experiment and like whole
Yeah.
experience. But I think that like if someone were to stare me down, I'd be like, "What is
What
stop?"
is wrong? Yeah, like
Like,
what are they looking
what's
at?
wrong? But so coming like full circle on this. So introvert, extrovert, ambivert, the characteristics of each are very different, unique. And I think the experiences of how, we were raised, our environments, our social circles, jobs, I think that all can play into it. And I think that it's really cool to talk about because we see so many variations of introverts. I think like there's the people who are introverts but work at like in public settings. I think that's super interesting. And then you have introverts who stay home all day, and then you have extroverts who go out and party, but then you have people who are extroverts and in sales. I mean, it's just there's so many different types of dynamics for them all, and I really think it's going to be fun to dive in and talk about these, and kind of maybe if someone's like, "Oh yeah, that is definitely me," or maybe they don't know that they're an ambivert and they have a good mixture. I think everybody could have a good mixture of both. Our goal, I think, our challenge for you at the end of this podcast would be to figure out if you're declaring yourself as an ambivert, to figure out if you lean more towards an introvert or extrovert.
Yeah, I'm really curious if you end up doing the quiz or just, thinking about it during this podcast, definitely leave a comment on the podcast. We'd love to see, what you guys are. I feel like it's so interesting because I think I didn't know really I was an introvert. I mean, even at the beginning of this podcast, I said, I don't know what I am, and we did the quiz. And I think I kind of feel like I fall a little bit more maybe in both just because there are certain things like I am confident in. And I think sometimes something I've been actually seeing on social media, which is funny, is there's such a I don't know if that's the right word, but there's such a box. I feel like sometimes people think of like introverts as and extroverts as, and I've saw some people be like, well, if you can do this, you're not an introvert. But I don't think it's like there's a specific box for either one. I think that's where, you can maybe fall into ambivert or, I just don't think it's like everything is always going to be exactly what you like an introvert is or an extrovert is. But it's interesting definitely to find out. I think it kind of helps you understand yourself more too. Cause I remember being like, I'm an extrovert to Evan. Evan's like, no. I was like, really?
I had no idea. It's so true. You really do learn a lot about yourself with these little personality quizzes, I think, and I think they're really fun because like there was a term that my therapist taught me. It was about being an empath, and that has so many levels to it, but it's such a deep emotional thing for me that it's like, "Oh, okay, that explains a lot." Like, empaths are very sensitive to negative topics like the news, like, they take it to heart. They are very sensitive, they're in tune with emotions more on a deeper level than most human beings, like, and they're very sensitive, and that's how I am, and so, when I learned that there was actually a word behind that, it it helped me kind of understand myself better and what my needs were and how to kind of live life as an empath and what I need to avoid and things to help protect myself. But also, I think with introvert, extrovert, I mean, everybody's kind of heard the terms of introvert, extrovert. But I think when you accept that this is how your life is, or if you're an introvert and you want to be an extrovert, but you just don't know how to get that push, I think that that's really important to be able to talk about and discuss. But I think it's really cool because for me, I mean, I grew up a massive extrovert. I was a huge extroverted child. Like, what would you say you were as a child?
I was super shy growing up. I actually to the like today, people tell me like, "Oh my gosh, you're so much more outgoing." But I don't know if that's just comparing me to how I was when I was little because I was so shy.
Do you think that there was a certain reason or just circumstance as to why you were shy, or is that just kind of how you were?
I just remember being super shy and like if I got called to read in class or got called to stand up in class, like that was so scary to me. Like I did not like that stuff and meeting new people, like I definitely feel like I was pretty shy and maybe that came from, being with my parents a lot. I feel like we hung out with other kids a lot too. Like they always had, I always had friends over. But I do remember being like really, really shy until I got a little older.
Interesting. So, would that be elementary school, middle school, high school, or do you think that was mainly during your adolescent like, at what point do you feel like that was really noticeable for you?
I remember in elementary school, I was super, super shy, and I'd say like I slowly started to grow out of it a little more. And then I ended up doing cheer when I was like just getting into high school. And I feel like that actually pushed me to be in like an environment that was different versus just like going to school because I didn't do a lot of sports and I had to get up on a stage and perform. And like those things might sound like not a big deal, but I feel like that really pushed me to like step out of my comfort zone and I learned like I became less shy because of those experiences.
Having those experiences definitely can help push you out of your comfort zone, and were you happy about those? I know some people when they are put in an environment like that or like a situation, it can make them extremely uncomfortable, and they're like, "I'll never do that again."
I went through my phases for sure. I went through loving it and then times I'd like come home and be like, I'm quitting. Like I'm and my mom just wouldn't. She told me like she wouldn't let me. She told me at the end of the season if I still didn't want to go back, then I could do that. But that I had made a commitment to a team and I had to follow through. Which was really in those moments was a really good parenting decision because I think it was just like those hard days probably that I was going. But I remember being like, why won't you let me? But it was like I made a commitment at the beginning of the year, and she always told me at the end of the year, if you don't want to go back, that's okay. And I would always go back. So I think I definitely probably struggled with pushing myself, but that's actually something now that I really do. If I ever feel like there's an uncomfortable situation, I actually try and push myself to do it because I like to experience it. And if it's something I don't like, then I won't do it again. But it's for me, I like to go and try something new.
I think it's really important to be able to try new things too, especially if you're aware that you're more shy. I mean, not to say that just because you're shy, you can't try new things. I mean, obviously. But like for me, since I was super extroverted from like literally when I was a toddler, like I specifically remember always putting on like little shows for my parents and always in my friends' neighborhood.
I did that.
I was very outgoing and yeah, I mean, it was just a thing. And it's fun to see the evolution of it all come full circle, but even into high school, I mean, I was a weird girl. Like I was diagnosed with ADHD or not ADHD, ADD, even though it's all called ADHD now. I didn't have the hyperactivity. I was just distracted a lot and that played into me being, I think, more extroverted, but since I had little weird quirks to me that necessarily weren't part of, like, the normal crowd or kid crowd, I never really was part of those. It it made me kind of adapt a mentality of be laugh with them or they're gonna laugh at you. Like, I've got beat them to the punchline almost kind of a thing. So I learned to laugh at myself my whole life growing up, and then my family dynamics were super extroverted, like, my whole family, but I'm more introverted now, and we can talk about that a little bit later about how I got to that point. But I think growing up, I always tried to be the person that would make fun of myself. That way, it was almost like a protection against myself because I knew at the end of the day, people were going to make fun of me. But if I made fun of myself, I didn't have anything to get hurt by.
It's so sad. Kids are so mean. I feel like it's such a sad thing that you ended up having to do that, but I feel like, you know, there are so many people that go through hard times when you're younger, and it can affect how you are in school or how you are in social situations because of how people have treated you. And I always think, like, who is parenting these kids? Like, if you are being mean, like, like, why are you like being so mean?
Seriously.
Kids are so mean, and I feel like that's such a like known thing. And I think it's because kids are figuring themselves out, and you're trying to figure out where you fit in. But some kids can be so mean. Like, I had so many hard situations when I was younger because I just wasn't treated right. But I feel like I was raised to always be super sweet and nice and like bring people in. And it's like, it's so sad that that's just not how it always is. There are so many
Yeah,
hard situations when you're young.
absolutely. And I think that the ways of how we're raised can play into that whole extroverted introvertedness because I think kids are like sponges. They mimic what they see and they absorb what they, grow up in, and sometimes it can push them to the total opposite direction. Um, but oftentimes I think that when we see like if it's a kid's being mean or something like that and it's affecting them, I mean that's probably something they're learning whether it's like on TV or in the home or whatever. It's not just I don't know. Sometimes kids can just be mean and it's not necessarily anything the parents are doing. So that's not what I'm saying at all.
No,
But
yeah, I know
it's
that.
interesting to see how yeah, it's interesting to see how family dynamics can play into it because I mean, would you say are your parents introverted or extroverted?
That's a good question. I'd say my dad is probably more extrovert. I don't know. Maybe he's ambivert, and my mom's maybe a little more introvert. But I know my mom used to be super extrovert, and it just changed.
I was
Like,
gonna say, for the stories I've heard about your mom, she sounds very extroverted.
yeah, I guess she still is pretty extrovert. She can talk to literally anyone. Like, she'll make a friend in the grocery store. I'm like, how did you do that? Like, and she likes
Teach
going
me
out. So
your
yeah, I'd say
ways.
she's more of an extrovert. My dad's more of an ambivert. Probably because of work and stuff, but he loves to be home. So. That's my
Okay,
guess.
yeah. So I think that yeah, I definitely could pick up vibes that they're ambiverts where they like to be in their nucleus is what my family refers to it as is their home, their immediate family, like to recharge in their home. But when they're out and about, they're people enjoy talking to them. They can talk to people and kind of enjoy life. But when they're home, they're recharging. It's good for them to step back and just kind of unplug and unwind.
I think you explained that better than I did. I just am like, I like panicked. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Then I just panicked. I went from
It's
all
all
over
good.
extrovert,
It
introvert, ambivert.
Every time I hear ambivert, man, it just sounds so weird.
I know. I
It
think of like a
doesn't sound normal.
dinosaur.
I don't know why.
I don't know why I think of a dinosaur.
Yeah, it's like ambivert. Rawr. So relationships though, do you think that we attract people that are within our own? I mean, like everyone's different, but for you, would you think that you are more inclined to go towards someone that's introverted or extroverted? I mean, what do you think Evan would be in this circumstance?
I definitely think he's an ambivert. I do like that one. I feel like I'm pretty confident on. I'd be curious if he did the test. Um, But I don't know what I'd like go towards. I don't know if I'd go completely for someone who's like a super extrovert either though, just because I'm like our home time and our downtime, and I feel like maybe that wouldn't balance. But I do know like you attract usually somebody that's opposite because you push each other. So
I also think that I think siblings can play into that because there's more to observe. And I think that also plays a part in it because I've seen my siblings and it's interesting to see how we've all been so different in personalities. But like my sister, I think would be an ambivert, but I think if I had to pick, she would be an extrovert because she's really good with people. But I think at the end of the day, she's exhausted from being good with people and just like wants to be home. And so that's where that like introvert side comes in. And that's kind of how it is with me. Like when I'm around people that I enjoy, it's fine, like not a big deal. But when I'm like, I don't know, in an environment I'm not familiar with and I just can't seem to communicate very thoroughly, like if I'm not in the right mindset, or I'm thrown off or, put on the spot, it can definitely make me kind of shut down, and that's not good for me, and it's not a healthy communication.
I think that is exactly what's happening to me right now. I cannot be put on the spot on a question. I just go, like my brain, I don't know what happened.
I literally wrote down all these questions to ask you without telling you to.
Note to self.
Give Bailey the list of questions before.
Give her a heads up or she panics and answers completely wrong.
You learn a lot, and it's like people don't really talk about this stuff, so it's not like it's on the forefront of your brain. I mean, it's not like you're thinking about introvert, extrovertedness every day. So, I mean, it's fine. You learn a lot. And I think that people will find it very helpful because they'll be like, I don't know. I mean, people will relate to the things you're saying too. Absolutely.
It's definitely, I feel like I panic when I'm like, I just think I really like to think about something. And like when you're asking me that, I'm like, okay, I really want to think about this and make sure I've thought it out. That goes to introvert, it doesn't it? Because that was something that I read.
Yes. That was something you like to, what was it? How do you communicate and process information? Organize thoughts and think about their opinions before voicing them. And then very introspectively taking time to understand all the factors, and they're great listeners. So that is what's happening with you. So for me to then just throw on all these questions at you, that would be, I mean, this is a great communication skill for people. If you know someone's an introvert, and you're doing what I'm doing right now, it's not going to go well. And so this is really interesting. So then rather than putting you on the spot like that, I think it's good for us to know that you need to be able to think about these things, to have a time to think about it. I mean, you think about the work dynamics. I mean, with being a content creator or influencer, whatever the heck you call it, on the gram, I think it's good because we don't just make a post and then post it. It's not like that. It's so much more. There's steps and countless of thinking and time that you put into things like that. And much like how all these questions are, it's the same kind of scenario.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's interesting now that you did ask me questions like that. Now stepping back and talking about it and being like, oh, that does fall under introvert. And I think it's happened to me in so many different situations where like I went to a group dinner and someone asked me like just a simple question, but in front of everybody. And I was like, I don't know. It was just like something like, what did you learn today? Or what did and I wanted to just be like, I know what I learned today, but I was just like, everybody was looking at me and I was like, I don't know. Like, I should be able to answer it, but like, if I could just be like, give me 5 minutes to think about this, I'll get back to you on that. And like, even though I know it's just all I can think about is everybody looking at me. And I think it's interesting because you know how I think but I just went and did rock climbing with friends in Florida. And we went and it was like, you rock climb and everybody's looking at you. And I like freaked out inside. I was like, like I don't want to do this. Like I looked
at
like
going to the gym. It's like, oh my gosh, so intense and intimidating.
Yeah. I think it's just when like all eyes are on me, it's like, no, panic, and my brain just like shuts off. It's like, no, thank you.
Okay, you're making me realize I say I'm an introvert, but I'm starting to wonder, am I an extrovert still? I don't know. Because like this is where the ambivert thing comes in. I really think I'm a full bleed ambivert. Like I cannot figure it out because I've never actually, when I've gone to the introvert side, it's usually I'm looking like when I'm looking at ambivert, I'm usually looking at the introvert. Like I'm also an introvert, but also an extrovert, but I'm not leaning towards, I don't know. I mean, I even said earlier, I thought I would be definitely an introvert, but I enjoy these face-to-face conversations. I think out loud as I'm talking and like voicing my opinions. And that's more extroverted. And I think, but like in social settings, oh gosh.
I feel like we're kind of opposite.
Like I cannot
on those a little bit because I feel like I have like a little bit different than this like go to all these social events. But that when we were talking earlier, when we were like just about to jump on, we were kind of talking about like social settings and stuff like that. And I feel like we might be a little different in that situation. And that's where I think we're kind of questioning extrovert for me. You were like, but you can talk to people. Remember when we were like just about to jump on? So like it's interesting because I feel like there are so many different areas where it's like, that's where I think it gets so complicated. I think when I was trying to explain it earlier, when I was like, people try and put it in a box and they're like, if you can do this, you're not an introvert. But I don't think it all comes down to just like that. I think there's so many different layers.
It's not one or the other. You don't, it's never, Yeah. Well, so to kind of give backstory a little bit for you guys, there is before Bailey and I started the podcast, we're just kind of going over our notes, making sure, we're on the same page. Obviously, we kind of weren't on the same page
Weren't.
during that quiz, dear Neptune. That's okay. But I was talking to Bailey, and I'm like, when we went to a dog concert in Malibu, and there was a point where she like knew all these people, and we met up, like we happened to be going to the concert at the same time. We didn't plan on going together, but it happened to be that we were going at the same time. So we met up and decided just to hang out. But then she knew some people there and was like, hey, she's like, hey, I'm gonna go talk to these people for a little bit. I'll be right back. And I was with Bryce, my husband, and I was like, oh gosh, how does she do that? Like, she's just so, hey, I'm Bailey. Like, how's it going? Oh my gosh, your dog's so cute. Like, whatever. I'm just like, where's the ice cream? I'm going to go sit down. Get me out of here. Olives, don't leave me. Like, it was like and that's how I usually am. But I think that when I'm not prepared to have to be social, I go one of either way. I either am like, okay, let's go. Like it's sale. They call it in sales, but like they have their sales voice, their sales mode, and they just like it's like a flip the switch. And I think that's kind of what I have to do. But sometimes that switch does not flip and it's stuck or the light bulb's burnt out. I don't know. Most of the time my light bulb is burnt out, I feel like. And so that's why I was like, yeah, I definitely could see that extrovert side of you. But you definitely have to think your thoughts through. And but I feel like you bounce ideas off of people too, don't you?
Yeah, I bounce ideas off of people a lot, but I would say, like, I think this is something that's super interesting too, is once I get close with somebody, I think it's really different. And like me and you, like, we're always on the phone and we're like, we talk all the time and, we're bouncing ideas off each other and I bounce ideas off Evan and my family. But I think it's really more outside of the circle I'm comfortable with. And that's funny because I know you're just asking me questions right now, but I think knowing we're sitting on our podcast makes me like, panic. And I think it's so situational for me, and that's where I think I get like I'm like, "Wait, let me think this out because there's so much more to this answer."
It really is. They're loaded questions, and it's not just a black and white like I made it sound with the quiz. Yes, agree or disagree. It's like, I don't know, but like we were just trying to figure out if you were to lean towards more one side, what side would that be? And I kind of want to take the quiz because I did it in a different way. So I want to take it in a agree disagree dynamic. But like I think that kind of stemming back to just like, okay, do you think that introverts, because we were talking about how can be extroverted and introverted, introverted and extroverted, but mostly introverted. As for me, I'm not sure anymore. This podcast is supposed to help people, and I'm just now all sorts of confused. I don't know.
We got
Sorry,
way
guys.
too deep into this.
We overthought it way too hard. Now we're like, crap. I don't know. But okay, do you think that an extrovert and an introvert can have a good, relationship, or can be friends? I mean, what do you think? Or well, not just an extrovert and an introvert, but like an extrovert and an extrovert, or an introvert and an introvert.
For sure. I think they can I feel like you usually end up like attracting to your opposite. That's what I feel like a lot of people say. So I don't think I really wouldn't work or it would work. I think it really depends on the person. But I feel like to me, and originally I think before we really dove into this topic, introvert to me was like a little more wanted to be home a little more, didn't really thrive off social situations, like had a smaller social battery. Where to me, and then like an extrovert, this is just like I think a little bit more of a generic what people think versus like diving super into it. And then like an extrovert is somebody who has a ton of friends and wants to go out and like thrives off social interactions. And to me, I feel like those are such extreme differences. And like that to me, I'm like, that would be really hard if Evan wanted to always go out and party and be with people, and I always wanted to be in. Where I feel like that part of us, does that make sense? I feel like I'm kind of getting off topic, but I'm trying to explain it. Where I feel like
No, that actually totally makes sense. It's a huge thing I saw on a reality show. Maybe it was Love Is Blind, another season. Man, this show is good if you haven't watched it. Wild. But there was a couple where one went out, partied till like 3 or 4 in the morning, and the other one was like, I want to be home, but I mean, we're getting married. I mean, this isn't exactly the thing she's like, I don't have a problem hanging out with your friends, but it's like there's a balance with it. And it just was really, they had a really hard time with it and it just was not meshing. And so I think that's a dynamic you have to consider, that if you're really like, if you really do lean towards more of an introverted side, and I do believe there are people who have full blown introvertedness, but it can affect a relationship and even a friendship, because I've seen definitely where I've been in social circles where, I don't know, my mom always said growing up, like anyone, like hanging out with a friend group of 3 or more can be dangerous, like, because it's just like 2 people can mesh and then it leaves a third person. I don't know. I was always in those like weird circle things, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, it's just like, I mean, the friendship podcast, we go over that. And so it's just one of those things though, but when 2 people bond over those things, it works. But then I think when you have one of extreme ends of introvert and extrovert, it can be a little more difficult.
I think that's kind of, I guess, where I was trying to explain it. Where I think 100%, I think the communication part, I think the other layers to introvert and extrovert, you can totally like balance each other out and like, you opposites attract. And I don't think it really is going to say you can't make it or it's not going to work. But for me, I know like in my past relationship, the person I was dating wanted to go out all the time and wanted to be with friends all the time. And I was like, this is not what I want to be doing all the time. And so we just didn't have the same interest when it came down to it. Like you say, Bryce is more of an extrovert, but I would say how we
Oh,
all
absolutely.
interact isn't like he wants to go out with friends all the time and party. And I think that's my biggest, I don't know, extrovert that comes to mind. I don't know why. So I don't know. I
I
guess
think
my
that's because about
and
your, yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So, question. So when you're driving in a car, this is a question, or at home and you're alone, music, no music, TV, no TV.
music or I will be singing and I am not a singer. So you want music on if you're around me.
Yeah, turn it up, Bailey.
What
I think
about
that's
you?
awesome. Yeah, definitely no. I like quiet. Like I'm not opposed to having things on, but like if I'm in the middle of something, I won't go out of my way to turn something on. Like I will just have it be quiet. And Bryce is the total opposite. He loves to
Evan's a
have
total opposite of
sound. He
me.
hates quiet. Really? So Evan and I are more alike in that aspect.
Yeah, and Bryce and I are more alike in that aspect.
That's funny. I definitely think that it's interesting because when you look at the like little things of introverts and extroverts, it's those small things that can make a difference. Because I remember when I was on a road trip with Bryce, like one of the first road trips we ever took, and I usually blast music when I'm alone in the car, but when I'm with someone, I like it quiet or like low, turned really low, because when we're having a conversation, I hate having to constantly turn it down because I can't hear him. But Bryce is always like, he wants to have music playing and like jamming out. And he just like, and anytime it's just like quiet, I remember specifically, he was like, can we turn music on? Do you want to be the DJ? And I'm just like, what? No, why can't we just like sit here and talk? He's like, oh, okay. He was like painful for him. And so I was like, I didn't know though that he liked that. And then I learned, I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. Like there's a give and take to it, which is fine. And usually like within the first 10 minutes of on a road trip, I pass out. I'm like, I'm so sleepy. But I think I mean, does Evan have to have it quiet when he's driving?
Evan can sit in silence in a car for so long. It's impressive. Like he'll put podcasts on sometimes. He doesn't really care to have music on, but like honestly, I think we could drive again from Florida to California and I think he could almost do the whole road trip in complete silence. And I'm like, I just end up like editing or putting music on and he's fine if I do put music on. It doesn't bug him, but he doesn't think to ever put it on. So it's unless I put it on, I feel like we don't usually have much going on in the car. I'm like, "Hello, we need music."
That's interesting. Is there a certain category of music you prefer to play then? Is it more like pop, party, rock, like, or is it more like trendy, country, like casual, calm? What kind of music do you usually prefer when you do that?
I only listen to country right now, so it's usually country right now. I don't know
That's
about,
so
but like
Bryce. Bryce loves country.
I only listen to country.
Does Evan like country music?
Yeah, he's actually the one that kind of got me onto country music when we first started dating. I was not a big country music person. And then when we started dating, I started to listen to it more. And then
I
just got obsessed with it, and now that's all I listen to.
Why is that so shocking for me? I don't know why. I would never picture Evan for a country music person.
Really?
Huh. Yeah, I don't know why. Just vibes. Like I said, we're always learning. So, okay.
Haley's ready with the questions today.
I got them. I got so many. I love it. It's really interesting. In a moment that you have an embarrassing moment and it's so awkward, people are watching or around, how do you usually react in that moment? Are you like cringing, or are you like whatever? Like how do you
Oh
react
no,
in
I
those moments?
panic. And then I think about that moment for a really long time. That is no. Do not handle those situations well. I feel like I end up just like kind of going inside. I'm like, okay, we can like go now. Let me process and overthink that now for a little bit.
Right. Okay. I mean, it really depends on the moment for me and what's happening and who I'm with. So, I mean, I'll give you guys an example. This is so funny. Like, I die laughing at the story now, but in the moment, I was like, what? Like, I was laughing at myself, but I was like, oh gosh, people probably think I'm so stupid. So, I worked at Einstein Bagels growing up in high school, and we would make bagels, whatnot, and then we would, when the order was ready, we'd call out their name and they would come up to the counter and they'd pick it up. And someone's name was Jesus, but the way Jesus is spelt is Jesus. It looks like Jesus. And so they gave me the bagel and I went out and I was like, Jesus. And then no one came and I was like, Jesus, your bagel's ready. And everyone's like, Haley, no, that's not his name. I'm like, yes, it is. It says it right here on the tag. And they're like, it's Jesus. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I was like, I just like put the bagel on the counter and I just went back and did the dishes. I was like, nope, I'm out. Like, fire me now. Let me go. Please get me out of here. It was so embarrassing, but it was really funny. I'm like, okay, well, now we know. So this is one of those moments I just had to laugh at myself. Otherwise, who knows what would happen. But yeah. Awkward.
There are so many. I mean, everyone goes through awkward moments, and I feel like most of the time I end up being like, okay, let's go. But it's just like, there are so many times I feel like awkward things happen, and I feel like the more they happen, the better you kind of get at handling them. But I always end up being like, oh my gosh, that was so embarrassing. We should leave now.
Well, and like for me, it's really interesting to see how I've evolved over time, because I don't think I haven't always been what I consider ambivert introvert. And even though I'm all confused now on what I am, I was a massive extrovert before, like no question about it. Not an ambivert. I wasn't anything. I was an extrovert. And then in 2014, I had a concussion that literally changed my personality. I went from an extrovert to an introvert. I couldn't process. They called me what's called an agoraphobic, which is the fear of crowds and like spaces with lot of people. Like I went to a concert and I had a panic attack and I started hyperventilating and I couldn't. And I actually think I was with Bryce. I think I was with Bryce at a concert and we were dating at the time. And it was really weird because I was like trying not to freak out because I didn't want him to think that like, oh my gosh, I can't, be in public. But, I was still trying to cope with these changes from the concussion. And I had never gone to a concert, in a long time since I had the concussion. So it was really interesting for me to experience those changes. And I definitely now have to push myself harder to do those moments that are more, I don't know, out of my comfort zone, I'd say. And I think that's kind of what's been really cool about all the travel air and like doing the podcast and us working together. It's really been able to help reignite that extroverted side of me, because it's pushing me to step out of what I think is my comfort zone and my bubble and my safe zone. And it's cool to see it because you grow with it when you try new things. And sometimes when you do those things, it just doesn't always like, you're like, all right, that wasn't for me. No, don't like it. And that's fine. But for me, I definitely had a hard time with the changes of going from an extrovert to an introvert.
That is so interesting, and it's super hard when you go through such a big change because of something that happened, but it's cool to hear that you are, like your Instagram has helped you so much, and I think that's something like that's helped me so much in a different way. Like I didn't go through, maybe a concussion or something like that, but being able to push myself in a different way because of my career is so cool. And it's cool to hear you saying because of all of the Travelier, you've been able to relearn those things that you really enjoyed about yourself before. And I feel like for me, I've also learned how to be so much like I'm being able to talk on a story sounds so silly, but like that was like I'm so confident in doing that. And I feel like overall, like being able to sit here and have these conversations on a podcast, do a YouTube, have an Instagram, TikTok, just all those things has pushed me to be so much more confident in myself, like even outside of social media. So even though we talk about all these things and we both talk about maybe, you're still figuring out what you are. But if you're an introvert or whatever it is, I don't think there's a negative thing to it. I think it's just learning what you maybe like when you're asking me questions, I definitely panic a little, but how can I work on, being able to answer those a little better? It's doing these things and doing things like this. And I think being able to try different things really helps push you to learn all these different qualities that maybe you want to be able to do. And I think that's something I love so much about doing social media is it's pushed me to be so confident in myself outside of social media too. And that's not something I feel like I don't know if I would have gotten that as much if I wasn't always putting myself out there like I am.
I really admire your confidence on your stories. You taught me so much. You're the one that even pushed me to start including myself more on my stories. And like I would take notes, like you would just casually throw stories up there about your day and you. And it was just, I mean, I truly admire your confidence in that. And that it's not easy. I know it's not. And I mean, I think it's interesting that also the people that judge other people for being on social media and say like, "Oh, you can't be an introvert and on social media." And I'm like, I don't see you on social media, like, and you're an extrovert. So does that mean that if you're an extrovert, you are on social media? Like, it's not like that. And so we definitely, I mean, I can get spicy. I will get spicy if people like come at other people for that stuff because it's not like that. And I think it also too, like we both have YouTube channels and being able to be on YouTube and that's a more in-depth version and perspective of someone's life. And being able to we talk about not always looking put together. That's not easy, I think, when you're so used to being put together on social media and having to push yourself to do that is I think a whole new level of, like, bravery because it's like you're accepting, like, this is your life, who you are, and, you know, it is what it is, but also it's just, like, pushing yourself out of that comfort zone, and it's really cool.
I totally agree. I love being able to push myself in new ways because I think one, stepping out and putting your life on social media is hard in general. Maybe not for everybody, but I think putting every little part of your life out there, maybe not every little part, but putting your life out there, there's a lot of pressure behind that. A lot of people are looking at it, but then to put your life out there and be on YouTube or wherever you're putting, videos or whatever, and not being 100% confident in how you look, but learning to love yourself no matter what. I think that is a huge step in what we're doing. And I think, you know, I'm really confident in who I am and I love who I am, but there are days where my hair's a little crazy and I'm not as put together and it's like, okay, like I'm YouTubing, but that's okay. That's who I am and that's okay if people see me like that. But I think it's not always easy to do that, even if it might be easier for somebody else, and I want people to know me for who I am. I'm not trying to not act like myself. I just most of the time don't leave my house if I'm looking like that either. It's just nobody would you know what I mean? Like, I feel like people would be like, "Oh, well,
I
that's not
don't
who you."
this is a normal thing, like, I
Yeah.
don't normally leave, like, looking like this.
Yeah, where it's like I want to come off completely authentic in who I am, but it's like also you're sitting down and recording yourself, so you're gonna be kind of put together because you are sitting there looking at yourself and you're recording yourself. So it's like, I try and record those in the moment moments too. And definitely in my last YouTube, I think you see a lot more of that too, where I'm in bed and my hair is crazy, but I'm confident in it. But it takes time. And I think even if you're just starting out on social media, I think pushing yourself to try new things can really help. So if you're listening to this and you're new in social media or even you've been doing it a while and you're ready to kind of add a new layer, I think just baby stepping into it. It's like I did Instagram and then got on stories and then I did YouTube and then we started a podcast and like it was just baby steps to add those things in to be more confident and push myself maybe out of my how I'm usually introvert to be a little more extrovert in some of these ways, in those ways.
It's true. When you're able to kind of look at all the layers that you're being thrown at with social media, and then on top of that, trying to figure out who you are on top of that, and then also when you're used to a certain image, looking a certain way, it's a lot that you're doing. And at the end of the day, you have to do what makes you feel best. If looking best is how you like to feel and you have makeup on and you're dressed to the nines, whatever, then do it. And, if that's your life as an introvert or an extrovert, then do it. Like, it doesn't matter what anyone else says, because at the end of the day, if you're doing what makes you feel best, nothing else matters. And then the rest will fall into place. If you're interested in taking our BuzzFeed quiz that we did not make, that we found on Google, we will post the link on our bio. And so on our Instagram, you can go and take it. So let us know what you are: introvert, extrovert, ambivert, or if we only made you more confused. I hope not. Please go let us know. I'm very interested to hear what everyone else's thoughts are, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening.